Hey guys, spiritual living on this channel is for educational purposes only and it's not intended as financial advice. Obviously, since the last video, we had a bit of news concerning China and the embrace of blockchain technology. Now, this probably will not include Bitcoin. It will be private. It will be surveillance, Orwellian type stuff. But just as I said in the last video, the international community continues to embrace crypto and the US is shunning it away. And eventually that's going to catch up with us in the US. I'm actually in New Zealand right now, visiting the BraveNewCoin offices. And speaking of China, did a little ditty on Neo because it's China and people are talking about China. And I wanted to talk about the Ethereum of China, super centralized. Check it out. I don't really have much hope for it in the near term as far as being decentralized, but it might have bottomed price-wise, and it's got a nice hype pump. The weirdest thing about this chain is the amount of total daily volume lately is just eclipsing everything, and I don't really know where that's coming from. It's not coming from transactions. Like it's a low amount of transactions per day and a high total daily transaction volume. So I don't really know what that's about. All right, let's get to some charts. SPX all-time high. Just as a few other people have said, crypto right now is more risk on than risk off. And if we're risk on, we want to see markets continuing to hit all-time highs. This is obviously partly because of rates continuing to be cut in the US and other places around the world. And if they keep cutting rates, we're just going to keep melting up. And that's what we've been doing on the SPX. So that's bullish for crypto, certainly. If we look at CME futures contracts, again, I was talking about this. I talk about this every video, so it's nothing new, but we got really lucky that China announcement was like in between these CME rollovers, because it'd be pretty weird if, the announcement was a couple days before when we dropped off like that, like we typically do before these rollovers. The timing was just so perfect, so perfect. And yeah, you can say it was a number of things as far as the price is concerned. It wasn't necessarily just the China announcement. I think the rollovers also had something to do with it. We're not talking about any one thing here. And I think most importantly, it's not like Chinese buyers coming into this market. It's people who think the Xi announcement is bullish, so they're buying here. And that was the third largest single day gain for Bitcoin in the history of Bitcoin's history. 40%, something like that. Looking at Tether, nothing too new other than the crypto capital CEO was arrested. And if you don't know anything about that, consider yourself blessed. But the crypto capital, or as I like to call it, the crypto cartel, was a payment processor for Bitfinex. And there's a whole history there. Bitfinex, of course, denied any wrongdoing and that they were a victim. And I also like looking at this Bitfinex Coinbase differential. Generally, we're more bullish if Coinbase is leading. If cash is leading over Tether, we're generally more bullish. Hasn't really been the case lately. So if we actually do move up again, I would like to see a negative premium between Coinbase and Bitfinex. So Coinbase actually leading would be pretty bullish. And look at the weekly cloud on BTC. Not a lot of it makes sense to me, other than the underlying principle, which is if we're in the cloud ever on any asset in the history of assets, price can just go anywhere in the cloud. That's the general rule. So the fact that we're like bouncing around, broke below the key June, bounced back up, hit the top of the cloud, like this doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't need to, but cloud rules are you don't trade when stuff's in the cloud because it's a no trade zone. Because stuff like this happens, you just don't know. There's no trend. It can go anywhere. I mean, we can still go to 5.5. We can still go to 10.6. This narrows out towards the end of the year, but right now as we stand, just more of the same on the high time frames. It doesn't mean you can't do things like ignore the daily, there's certainly some interesting stuff coming up. In the last video, I said there might be an 8-8 to 10-6 trade to take based on the edge-to-edge stuff in December. And it turned out it happened like that day, not that day, but a few days after the China stuff happened, basically. So the edge-to-edge is still there. We could just creep down along this cloud resistance, as we typically do, creepily enough. The cloud just knows that, like, oh, there's this curvature here, and eventually we'll trigger this edge-to-edge. It might take another couple weeks. It might take us, retracing 50% of this 40% move, retesting the 200 EMA, whatever it is. But the bottom line is, once we're in the cloud and the TK lines have crossed bullish, then we're good to go for that trade. Where we are now is obviously better than where we were at the local low, but going forward, definitely looking for that ETE. Another thing I'm looking for is this median line retest on the way up this time, 11.5 or a little higher as we go along here. I do really like how we bounced. We kind of failed to hold this diag, tested this one and just like bounced way back up. But 11.5 is what I'll be looking for on that one. I also like, if you're bullish, that we didn't actually get the 5,200 bear cross, at least with the EMAs. I think we did with the MAs or some other variant of moving average. But I think I said this in the last video. I've said it before. Something about the way EMAs cross or don't cross when you expect them to cross. So we expected this to bear cross, right? We expected the death cross. There was articles about it. Everybody's talking about it. It didn't. So in my mind, that just says, similar to a pattern you expect and failing, like this, it was a head and shoulders. It didn't end up resolving as a bearish head and shoulders. We get this massive up move. Similar case here. We expect the bear cross, didn't get it. Therefore, it's now bullish. That's what you expect. I expect this to be bullish because of that. One thing I do like on the high time frames, on the line graph, kind of cuts the noise off of the wicks and whatever, is this flag pennant type falling wedge thing that we're getting here, with RSI just completely resetting to 50. So if that can just hold at 50 as we're sort of figuring out what's going on here, the market's in a bit of a shock, obviously. And there's plenty of profit taking from people who are in, at 7.4, at 8, at 8.8. All these people are like, okay, finally we're up again. I can sell after we just went straight down for the past couple months. So while all that's going on, RSI is resetting, momentum's resetting. That again tells me there's plenty of room for upside here. Did an article on ETH. Something interesting about ETH lately, inflation hit an all-time low, which is certainly more bullish than bearish, but you also have to realize that their total issuance isn't ever going to zero. So it's just something you need to grapple with as a hodler. Looking at ETH, just like BTC, it's got this edge-to-edge thing. It's crawling down this cloud, and it didn't make lower lows. 160 is the line in the sand. Below 160 and things get really interesting. We'll get more treasury selling. We'll get CDPs being liquidated on MakerDAO, and that'll just push everything. It'll just be a giant long squeeze again and just push everything, I think, below 100 even. So last video I was talking about, if we're down 40% for the quarter, we're around $100. It's looking less likely now, obviously, but I still like the chances for the edge-to-edge from 190 to 240 or 200 to 250, whatever that is. You could argue there's some sort of W thing here, double bottoming, which is nice on support. Previous resistance becomes support. That's what you want to see. For the edge-to-edge, again, I'd be waiting for this bullish TK cross to activate. That just says that in addition to the edge-to-edge, there's other evidence on the cloud to suggest bullish momentum going forward. Another way you can look at this trade is if we break the 200 on the daily, which is around probably 200. That's certainly obviously bullish. And it'd be the first time we really did it definitively, since we broke down. So that's obviously what we want to see. You want to see the golden cross. This pitchfork is still in its early stages, but it does look pretty good that we bounced right at the wing. You know, if this was the resistance wing maximum, this is the support wing maximum. Some people don't like pitchforks. Again, I understand that, but it comforts me. It's like a warm blanket, okay? 316 median line, similar to BTC. That's the upside target. If this trend is real, if it has legs going forward. Looking at ETH BTC, which got absolutely slaughtered the other day when BTC broke 40% on the day. ETH didn't really do anything. You know, it went up to 191, but that didn't have a 40% day. So this whole structure, you know, we were talking about this massive inverted head and shoulders. This whole structure just got reset and everything's super messy. And the inverse can be true for this pair as it was for BTC USD, where we were expecting the bullish golden cross here and didn't get it on the 12-hour. So you might say to yourself, well, maybe this actually won't end up giving us this 15% move to 0.025. You know, it's touch and go, obviously. But if we get the edge to edge, the question is, does that move with Bitcoin or without Bitcoin? You know, at the end of the day, if you're not paying attention to both the BTC and the USD pairs, you're actually losing money if you're not in BTC USD, if the ETH BTC pair is lagging. So, you know, depending on how you want to trade that, that's up to you, obviously, but definitely worth looking at everything. Lastly, let me just talk about Ripple a little bit. Nice little edge to edge here, activated on the daily with a bullish TK cross. This whole chart is a giant mess, but it does have this to 362, something like that. And again, you can argue some sort of diamond bottom that's sort of broken up. The volume certainly doesn't give you the impression that there's any pattern here. But trend metrics look pretty good. All right, that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, share, comment, subscribe, hit me up on Twitter, and happy trading.